All right, I'm gonna call to order the Downtown Revitalization Ad Hoc Committee to order. It's 9 a.m. on February 22nd, 2024, and we are on Zoom being recorded. We'll start off with review and approval of meeting minutes from last meeting on January 25th, 2024. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to.
Okay, and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is approved. Thank you very much. Since again we are live on Zoom, I'll open up to any public comments. We don't have anyone locally here. Is there anyone online showing for any public comment?
There's no one online.
No one is online at this time,
Nope.
so we'll bypass the public comment and we'll go right to items for discussion. Start number one with just discussion of downtown revitalization. We do have our community economic developer director here, Mr. Bob Ruley. Bob, would you like to start us off with anything that you'd like to discuss?
Sure. I mean, as you all know, you have the revised zoning amendment and form-based code that incorporates all of the comments that we heard from committees in the planning board to the extent that they're legal. Our consultant has reviewed that document for compliance with MBTA. So hopefully on the 12th, you'll approve that, which is significant. Other things that are happening, as I mentioned last meeting, there is an executed purchase and sale agreement for the Friendly site, and I've seen some preliminary renderings. It's going to be groundbreaking in terms of the transformation, in terms of what they're going to do. The plan now is to put a restaurant in the bowling alley site, a mixed-use building along the road with commercial on the ground floor, apartments above it, and then 12 or 14 for-sale townhouses to the rear. I mean, they're performing that those townhouses are going to be over $700,000. So it's a significant tax benefit to the town. Tying into the resolution that you have on the agenda, we have started to have preliminary discussions with engineering firms to look at what's happening in Central Square and reconfiguring not just the 2 lanes to 1 lane, but more the intersection of Broad, Main, Plymouth. I mean, just looking at all of that. So once the resolution is adopted by the council, we'll be ready to go out with an RFP for an engineering firm. I think you were invited, Dr. Perry. We have a call tomorrow with the consultants working with us on the MBTA platform relocation.
I saw the email this morning. I worked till about 1:30, but as long as you I'll send me the link. I'll try and get on as soon as possible.
Okay. So really just so you and Michael are up to speed that, I know people are, is something really happening? Yes, something is really happening, but I think the consultants can lay out what that process is with the MBTA and what we have to have in terms of work product for the next step. But, so I think that's positive. Michael and I will be meeting with President Clark and his staff in the next couple of weeks to talk about what happens at the fire station location when the fire station is no longer there. We're moving forward with a discussion on jointly developing structured parking, combining that site with our public site property behind that, and possibly some of the university's parking behind the school. People think sites are big until you start doing structured parking, and they become small really quick because of the ramps and the turn radiuses. So, but I think it's not too early to start having that conversation, because that will be a combination of funding through how the university gets funded, and then what we can do. And then lastly, we are putting in a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant application for a facade program in Central Square. I'll come back to the council as to how you want that to run, whether it's an out and out grant, it's a match. And
it's interesting. How do other communities do stuff like that?
I think when I was in Warren, we had ARPA money. I did it as a grant up to $25,000
To the building owners.
to the building owners. But again, that will be, some of that will be predicated on if we get the grant and how much it is.
Yeah, right.
So then we're also putting in a grant for water infrastructure just because we know it's an issue. And correct myself, the last thing that we're working on that many people aren't aware of is we've initiated conversations with the Department of Corrections in terms of reallocation of wastewater from the university. We've got them the calculations on the flow that comes from the university. It's about a third of what our daily treatment flow is to the plant. So opening that up is going to be significant. But again, that's a process too, because state can't use federal money. We can use federal money. My thinking is that we're going to have to run infrastructure from the university, obviously, to corrections, but there's residential properties in between that, so we want to probably look at hooking them in too. And then also, is there an opportunity? The Department of Corrections gets water from Taunton. Is there an opportunity to at least have a conversation about that?
Share some of that water. So again, that's a huge part of what's going on with our town capacity, both water and sewage. Ballpark, what type of time frame do you think that might be?
I would say on the corrections, that's probably a 5-year process. Right now, they are under a consent order from DEP, so the timing was good because they have to make improvements to their treatment plant. So this gives them an opportunity to look at enlarging it. So we're coming in at a good time, but that process is just starting.
Sure.
And then identifying the funding is going to be the next challenge.
Yeah.
The way a lot of these infrastructure funding projects work is theoretically we should have been doing this 5 or 10 years ago, because if you're shovel ready, they'll send you a check tomorrow. We're not close to being shovel ready. So, and depending on what happens in Washington over the next couple of years, but at least we have people at the table. I mean, I guess that's the most important part. There is a regional water study that is being funded through the EDA that Old Colony Planning Council is coordinating. I don't see anything coming out of that. I mean, we have 26 communities and 26 different priorities. There is a meeting upcoming with Brockton, Rainham, West Bridgewater, and East Bridgewater. I think Brockton has overcapacity. They have more supply than they can use, but some of that is associated with the desalination plant that they have, and there's a huge expense to running that, and there's issues with what the quality of that water is too. So I don't know that that's so much Brockton being generous or Brockton trying to get their uncle out of the basement.
Sure. So with that being said, being a potentially 5-year process to get that potentially ongoing, how does that affect our growth and development that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think at times, we've always said that, Vision Reality was a 10-year plan that we're condensing to a 5-year plan. So I think it ties in. I mean, we have capacity at the wastewater treatment plant now. The Perkins Foundry project probably won't break ground until the fall at the earliest. I think the first project you'll see coming out of the ground is at the Friendly site. They've got 30 days left, I think, before they have to close. So that will be hopefully the first project we see under the form-based code. I think, in terms of Campus Plaza and the relocation of the MBTA platform, those are all ongoing, but I would say that's all going to be within that 5-year period. So I mean, it
should come together.
It should come together
at a certain time.
Yeah, I mean, the puzzle will be complete, but important that we keep our foot on the accelerator on both the platform and the wastewater issue.
Sure.
And we do have an internal water strategy committee. working with environmental partners on two new wells on High Street. Michael talked about Vernon Street. Vernon Street's going to require a ton of money, just because, it's a different type of well. It's going to need different type of treatment. So that's, I have my eye on that as well in terms of funding sources, because, that is going to be significant. And I think the last point that I want to make, and I talked to Michael about this yesterday, is, listening to Ms. Hansen's comments, and even when I was at the Lions Club, everyone seems to think that what we're doing is going to raise their taxes. In the perfect world, it would level them or reduce their taxes. So for the meeting on the 12th, I'm going to share with you what, if we built out to what is allowed in MBTA communities and the zoning amendment, how much additional revenue that will create. Because, what people don't understand is whether we do nothing, in the next couple of years, you're going to have $100 million of water and sewer.
And it's going to hit us.
It's going to hit you.
Taxes going
that will definitely bring your taxes up.
For sure.
So, this isn't a bad thing. But
well, I think that's the realization we've got to come across to the public. Exactly. Because they see more building going on, more kids in the school system, more need for police and fire, and that's all going to escalate costs. But on the other end, like you say, we've got to create some other revenue streams that's going to help build a tax base and pay for these other things.
Yeah, and we've heard legitimately from residents and even members of the council, concerns about traffic with new development, and those are real, but those traffic issues exist today too. So, now we're using this as the impetus to start looking at, what we can do down there. And we might end up taking a portion of the Walgreens parking lot, for instance, if we have to square that off somehow. So I think, this is kind of the but for the fact we're doing all this, none of these things would be happening. And there's a significant amount of federal money that is available for us to look at that project. The advantage we have is, even though it's a state numbered highway, it is not a state road in that intersection. Right. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility with having not to deal with DOT. Right. East Bridgewater, as an example, we've got a tip project with DOT. Yeah, 10 years ago, you got the award and they still haven't done it.
Yeah, right.
So we're going to be able to move a lot faster.
That's good. Yeah. Just circling back, so again, we talked about Perkins being developed, and we're talking about the Broad Street project. Outside of that, before we get to anything being redeveloped at Campus Plaza, does our water and sewer system have the capacity for any other projects that could come up in town before that 5-year window hits, or are we at a maximum capacity for other?
I won't speak for the water department. I pay attention to it pretty closely. They'll tell you no.
Okay.
But that's the wrong answer.
Okay.
Again, we shouldn't be telling people no.
Yeah, right.
We should be accelerating a solution.
Yeah.
So, we should be able to have the 2 new wells done on High Street. That will increase the amount of the flow rate that they can get in, the next 2 years. So, wastewater is a concern for, that's my biggest concern. That was my question coming in was, do you have issues? And I was told no. Then I got here and I'm like, your math is wrong. So, but I think, we're aggressively addressing that. And there's other activity. 96 Main Street is in play right now. I know there's at least 2 purchase and sale offers in on that. And that would be housing as well. People are looking for 4 townhouses for sale, not rental, which is good.
Is that the yellow house?
Yeah.
With the land that's in the backside of it as well? Are we talking about tearing that down to build a new?
I think that everybody that I've talked to that's had a structural engineer in there, and based on what the asking price is, it's going to be a tear down. It's going to have to go before historic because it is.
Yes, it is historic.
But I think that the economics of it don't make sense. You can't spend what you have to spend to acquire it, rehabilitate it, and make any money.
Right.
But again, that's and I've told everybody that's interested in it, you're gonna have to go before historic, so.
Yeah, it's gonna go through demolition delay and all that type of stuff as well. All right, very good. Questions from anyone else on that?
You asked them all. And we got a lot of good info.
Yeah, the other last tidbit of information I'll share with you is, D'Angelo's site, I mean, people are actually looking at that. I mean, and I reiterate, that didn't close because of lack of business, it closed because of lack of help. But there's quite a bit of interest in that. I know that there are people talking to the property owner on the opposite corner where Just Desserts is.
Okay.
He's an elderly gentleman that lives up in Haverhill in his 90s. I know that there's conversations with Mr. Godchak about his property. He's in his late 80s.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of activity, and these are local people that are here with businesses that are talking to. But then we also have outside developers that are very capable, that are interested in what we're doing. The small business program continues. We have our fourth Friday coffee hour tomorrow at the senior center. Those are absolute love fest.
Good.
I think they're well attended, and I mean, people are very supportive. We continue to do the small business workshops once a month. Those aren't as well attended as I would like, but the people that are going, I mean, are getting something out of it, so that's good. And we're expecting that, in light of what's happening in Milton, that, the Boston Globe is kind of helicoptering around us, waiting to see what Bridgewater does, because we're probably the only positive story associated with that. And then I think, again, that's a credit to the council early on, saying that this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
And I get that change is hard for some people, and some people just, there's no way I'm ever going to change their mind, but this is a good thing. I mean, I hear that 6 stories is too high, but there's a reason for that. I mean, if a developer wanted to do, I mean, if you go above 6 stories, it changes the type of construction that you do. Some of those 6-story buildings might actually only have 5 occupied space because they park underneath one of them.
Right.
But, we wrote that in a way that also guaranteed us that we would get additional affordable units. So in all likelihood, the only 2 locations you would ever see that is at Campus Plaza and potentially Spring Street lot if the MBTA ground lease it, because it has to be over 160,000 square feet, which is almost 4 acres. So.
So just one piece of advice then maybe for that next meeting when you do present some of this is maybe going back, because again, I'm sure you're going to be talking before we go over voting on the form-based code, is just maybe highlight a few of those things that the public was concerned with in the presentation before we vote on it, and just let them know how it, what's being applied to, what were the changes that were created from, planning board and the other input that you got.
As I shared last night, and I think that, a lot of the changes were just scrivener's errors and numbering, and the most significant one was the technical review committee that we can't do that, so we call it a compliance review process now. MBTA communities, the planning board chair wanted something in there that said all new development in the CBDR could not have residential on the ground floor. MBTA communities doesn't allow you to say that. So I mean, somebody could do that, but then we wouldn't be able to count those units towards the compliance number. I think that, not to bore people, but in all the conversations that I've had with the development community, lending is really difficult right now, and getting money is very difficult, requiring a lot more equity than
most people have.
Property values. I mean, the Pascal property is 2.3 acres that's selling for 2.3 million. So it's $1 million an acre. I mean, that's Boston prices.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so that's kind of setting the bar. So these deals are thin in terms of getting them done. But no lender is lending on commercial or retail right now. They're all on housing because it's just too risky.
Yeah.
Now, I know that both on the friendly site, both Bluestone and Rockland Trust have expressed interest in funding those projects. So, which is good because
They want to invest in the community.
you're keeping it local. But
Who's the developer for that?
I can't say that yet. I can just tell you, and when they have a purchase and sale agreement,
Yeah.
when it closes, I can tell you.
Yeah. Okay. I also heard, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Just a question, I lost it. Just so you know, there's 5 members of the select board. And
Oh, no.
I just looked it up while we were doing it, but, so the friendly site, that was my question. I had another one, but oh, can we have whatever we're gonna get at the council? Will we be able to see it before it's a PowerPoint at?
Yeah, I will have, when Debbie sends you the packets in advance, I'll have the presentation in there for you.
Thanks. Much more educated ahead of time.
Yeah.
Even though I need the
Sure.
Thank you.
And again, I just know that, we got a couple of the buildings over here for sale, and I was talking with a renter within one of the buildings potentially interested in buying. But the number's just at a place where it's just not,
Yes,
it's not
so
a friendly number.
Yeah, I mean, the building next to Old Town Hall is owned by the same owner that owns 96 Main Street.
Correct.
And that the number on that building keeps moving. And I mean, and just, I've had people, indicate that they want the building to be sold, but just getting access to see it has been difficult.
Oh, I see.
And so, I think the development community is aware of what we're doing, so now there's a lot of speculation out there, but at the end of the day, just because, particularly in Central Square, we're not really changing much. We're reducing some of the parking, allowing for more mixed use, but the numbers just will never make sense.
Right. What they're trying to get.
Reality needs to set in a little bit.
For sure. And again, it's, person I talked to would love to, take it over. They like to, go out there with a can of paint and do some improving on their own. But they just feel like their hands are tied. And as you said, if, finances for commercial buildings is limited to very scarce resources.
As an example, I mean, the where Just Desserts are, the average rent there is $8 a foot all in. I mean,
which is inexpensive.
Yeah, I mean, so that's nothing against those local small businesses, but that's the only place they can survive.
Correct.
And you've got somebody that's owned it for 100 years that $8 is good enough.
That's right.
They don't complain about anything. No lights on.
But they're not right. They're not investing too much improvement to get that up to code or improvements there.
But I think people are looking at it and saying, okay, can I add a second or third story there now? I mean, and now it starts to make some sense. But that building has some interesting architectural features, but structurally, I don't know that
it could support a second or third floor.
You have to build a steel skeleton within it,
which is very, very costly, I would imagine. But good, I mean, just good to hear the hubbub of what's going on as far as potential interest in different properties.
Yeah, and we try, I continue to do, we do the e-newsletter every other week. I do my Let's Talk every other week. We're trying to make sure people are getting as much information as we can.
You got to seek it up too. You just can't, come out and say, I'm not hearing about any of this. It's out there. You just got to kind of come out and find it.
I'm not a techno person. I mean, I think we have a little over 400 people that subscribe to the newsletter, and the open rate is, almost 95%. I guess that means something. I don't know if they read it, but I mean, they're opening it. So, and we've had a couple of people that have unsubscribed for whatever reason, but we're still missing, and again, I mentioned this at last meeting you were at, Paul, young professionals with kids, and the last thing they want to do is come to a town council meeting, even when you're on the town council.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, but I think generally the public is supportive of what we're doing. We just don't see them at the meetings, and that's going back to the seniors have been the best. I mean, many of them remember what things used to be like, and they acknowledge things need to change. And past experiences, those are some of the hardest groups.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. What time is that coffee tour?
It's from 10 to 11 at the senior center.
That's what I teach.
We bring them coffee and bagels and donuts.
They're happy.
And they love it.
But that is a hard group, and that's good news to hear.
Yeah, I mean, we had probably 30 people the last month, when we did last month.
You know, Leslie told me the meeting was really Leslie Barbosa.
Yeah, and we come in right after they finish line dancing class.
Oh, there we go. It's all about the order of
Timing,
things.
yeah.
Exactly, for sure. Paul, do you have any other questions that you want to throw out?
No, thank
And ask on anything? All right. Very good. I thank you for the updates, and we look forward to the presentation
Yep,
at the next
looking
council
forward to
meeting.
it.
Very good. So moving on to item B, discussion of the Route 18 corridor transportation study resolution. So we did have a resolution drawn up to get the ball rolling on engineering. It's on, I think you all have a copy of it. You guys have had a chance to read through it.
Mhm.
Should I want me to read it for the record since we're recording or anything? Or
Yeah.
you don't need to? All right, that's
I
fine.
was, before you do that, I
Yeah.
was just gonna say, I think one thing that could be helpful is to have some of the stuff you're doing more upfront on the main page. Because people going to look for stuff, if it's
Or
harder
links
for them
linked
to
to
do
it,
it, just, I mean, because I think it's all good news. And if we throw it in your face,
No, that's it. I mean, and I think Debbie had mentioned yesterday, I mean, they're putting the zoning amendment on the landing page, but yeah, I mean, if this is going forward, I can write up a, kind of a teaser that this is going forward. Yeah, maybe certainly we can
Put that
move
on
things
the
there.
links.
I'm
Yeah.
all for that.
Yeah, I think that would be good, for sure.
okay,
All right, so again, it's basically written to summarize, what's been done, how we, it's in correspondence to vision to reality and our master plan going forward, and then talking about a little bit about what are some of the ideas as far as reconfiguring the parking, talking about widening sidewalks, rapid flashing beacons at the crosswalk. So it touches on a little bit of the changes that we're looking for. So again, we're just giving the council the mechanism to get the ball rolling on appropriation and engineering services, get the ball rolling for the downtown. So do I hear a motion to approve as written to move up to the town council for review and approval?
Motion.
Motion. Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't see any. So we'll move this up to the town council and we'll get this ball rolling. All right, that was quick on that. Let's see, any other discussions anyone wants to make, questions, concerns before we look for a dismiss? All right, so I'll get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
And a second? I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye,
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned at 9:28.
all good news.
I think this